Why is government allowing mass immigration when we are in a housing crisis? What is the economic reasons behind not blocking the mass immigration to ease on housing shortage? Birth rate has been steadily declining since the start of the millennium. Most societies' governments are a pyramid where you need a young base to work and tax. It's not unique to Australia. A lot of Western nations face a similar issue, and are trying different solutions, i.e. France trying to raise pension age to keep people working longer, etc. Look at Japan and South Korea for an example of what the situation could look like if immigration was barely a trickle. So sectors of our economy don't collapse. Of course, maybe more people would be having children if they could afford it. Lower birth rate due to expensive housing and cost of living. Need to fudge the numbers with immigration to keep the economy going up and up. 2/3 of people in this country have a pecuniary interest in residential property. There are political reasons to keep it topped up. It's cheaper to import workers than to grow them from birth. For every $1 a migrant may cost, they contribute $12 to the economy. Mass immigration. 200,000 a year come as permanent migrants. Most are from the UK, South Africa, EU, or India. The rest are temporary workers and international students, most of whom pack up and go to another country after a few years. Without mass immigration, Australia would be in recession, and that looks bad on a politician's CV. Because we citizens don't have enough BBs. It's now on 1.6 per woman, which is less than replacement. I am a woman who hasn't had any, so I haven't contributed. Sorry about that. It's good for the Fed government. The Fed Treasury has the 3 Ps of growth, productivity, participation, and population. Population growth allows the housing Ponzi scheme and increases demand for services. It also allows the government to say stupid shit like we're not in a recession while living standards drop. The cost of these new migrants in terms of housing and infrastructure is then borne by the states. Companies complaining to the government they can't find cheap skilled workers. Although they omit the cheap part out when they complain. To lower wages and raise property prices. Why is the government allowing a housing crisis when we have so many people, both citizens and immigrants, who need housing? Because it's Australia's tried and tested method to avoid recession. To keep house prices soaring because A, they themselves own multiple investment properties. And B, to gain more control on a whole generation via create the problem to here's the cure via going through a mortgage deal, where the government owns 50. This is a government-made crisis by design. Their answer will always end with them gaining more control. 'Cause they are corrupt and don't represent the interests of voters. Because there's an imbalance in the number of people the country needs to operate optimally vs the number of homes it can house. Because they are muppets pretending to be real people. Because Australians don't want to do the ick jobs that migrants are willing to do: childcare, nursing, carers, etc. Flunking GDP numbers perhaps? GDP needs to go up, that's all they care about. The big banks and retailers demand it. It keeps labor costs down and provides more customers. What's not to like? Face with tears of joy. To hide what a terrible job they're doing at managing the budget. Need more taxpayers. Because the govt keeps saying the housing crisis has nothing to do with immigration, yet no housing crisis when borders shut and no active immigration. The govt is hell-bent on continuing its deal with India regardless of who becomes homeless. Indian government has taken over US immigration. Because the government isn't your friend. Because it lowers everyone's quality of life and makes them reliant on government. How else are all the diploma mills churning out useless degrees going to survive without govt assistance? Lots of skilled and specialist migration to make up for loss of the same. Lots of boomers straight up retired when the pandemic hit and we haven't been educating replacements fast enough. Especially bad in growth industries where migration has been required to fill positions even before the pandemic. Because politicians' big business only care about growing total GDP and the value of their property portfolios at all costs, and most of them will be dead by the time Australia's quality of life has eroded so badly for the average citizen that it's just as bad here as other countries. Stop picking the big parties, or nothing will change. I feel like the numbers they publish aren't right either. Canada has been caught out bringing in nearly 1 million people per year since 2020 by tinkering with definitions. They managed to publish a number of about 0.5 million per year for immigration, by putting an employment requirement on the other 0.5 mils residency permits, hence not qualifying them as an immigrant, just a sort of permanent resident. I wonder if the Australian government have been doing this. It's called the population Ponzi. Society will collapse if we don't import more taxpayers. But won't we need more hospitals and schools etc. for all these extra people? How will we pay for it? Easy, import more taxpayers hash. In case you haven't noticed, we don't have enough doctors, nurses and tradespeople. Short answer, they don't give a F about you. How else can they keep this bubble going? Government will do whatever it takes to keep this bubble, and their prop investment portfolio, from bursting. We need more Uber Eats drivers, that's why. JKS LOL. Immigrants are modern-day slaves to the govt. They will work within any type of industry paying taxes, eventually buy a house pay taxes, buy a car pay taxes etc. All debt of course, and will comply with whatever govt wants. Without immigration we are in a population decline due to births and deaths. And immigrants come with skills that we as a country require. Because there's no benefit to the government in solving the housing crisis, which isn't really a crisis. Australia is a business and people are the products. It's a horrible system focused on extracting as much value from people as possible and concentrating that wealth with the most selfish. Our bodies exist to feed the greed of the insatiable. But migration is not a bad thing. Freedom of movement benefits all societies. New ideas, opportunities, and skill sets are great. We do need to rethink housing. It's more than a supply issue, it's the type of supply, the role of housing as an asset, a social status symbol etc. etc. Profit, pure profit. Property lobby is very aligned with government. The boomers were such a large generation, we need more people than they had kids to allow them to have a comfortable retirement. Basically we are kicking the can down the road so the boomers can have one last easy go at Australia's expense. They need more people to pay into superannuation. Not enough nurses and carers for one. Every public hospital in the country is significantly understaffed. Universities don't produce nearly enough of certain health degrees. It takes 4 years to turn an Australian into the right kind of health worker. It takes a few forms and under a year to bring someone in from overseas. A housing shortage isn't fixed overnight, could take years and still not be enough, so how long do you block immigration? Why are you believing right-wing media? Demography is destiny. Auguste Comte, 19th century. They knew back then that the population mix defines a country's destiny. The boomers will eventually die off, but before they do they will consume more healthcare and welfare resources than any generation in history. Despite the common belief, politicians aren't stupid. They know the taxpayer base is shrinking at the worst possible time. Without immigration the entire system is at risk. Like many have said, without immigration, Australia would be in huge trouble economically. Far worse than whatever trouble we have now. I always find it funny when I see racists crying about immigration, yet they don't realize how important immigration is to them having a decent life. Cause someone's gotta pay for the Centrelink for all the sooks like you. Immigrating skills that AUS can't fill, I think. Who else is going to buy all the useless shit we need to keep the economy going? Who do you think builds the houses and infrastructure? If you look at the census data, the biggest factor in housing shortage is from less people living per household. You know how everyone loved when the city offices are empty, now those people work from home in a room that someone once would have lived in.